Alonso Martinez was born into a humble family. When he married me, he was the one who married into a wealthy family. But now, in everyone's eyes, I am the one who married above my status. Even the female assistant he personally promoted had more influence and respect than I did. A client who failed to recognize the company president's wife knelt before me, praising how she and Alonso were a perfect match. He even begged her to say a few good words for him in front of Alonso. It wouldn't have been right to embarrass the client, she explained awkwardly, as if that was why she hadn't clarified the misunderstanding earlier. Yet the uncontrollable delight in her eyes betrayed her true feelings. I tilted my head and stared at her for a while before informing her. You don't need to come in tomorrow. You probably don't know me very well. The consequences of embarrassing me are much more serious. Chapter 1. She doesn't recognize you because she isn't qualified to. Alonso pulled me onto his lap and chuckled softly as he tried to comfort me. But his next words were meant to defend his assistant. Romina just isn't good with words. But there's no need to get this angry over it. Princess. The CEO Martinez, who had always been tough and decisive in front of outsiders, still showed his most accommodating side when he was with me. However, he clearly had no intention of allowing me to interfere with his staffing decisions, especially when it came to his most trusted assistant. During critical stages of projects, some of his schedules were kept absolutely confidential. Sometimes, even I didn't know about them, but Romina always did. Back when Alonso introduced new company policies, Romina charged forward as his strongest supporter and offended many people. Someone even tried to harm her. Alonso personally picked her up from the hospital and took her directly to the CEO's office on the top floor through the VIP elevator. He openly announced to everyone that Romina had his full backing. From then on, everyone knew. Seeing Romina was almost the same as seeing Alonso himself, so it was no wonder that although this company originally belonged to my father, new clients no longer recognized me. Fernanda. All they knew was how to please Romina, as if the position of the company's female owner belonged to her. Chapter 2. What if I insist that she leaves? I stared at him without blinking. A hint of surprise flashed in Alonso's eyes, but his mood seemed rather good. Are you really jealous? Over something like this? His deep eyes carried a faint smile, as if my reaction was an absurd overreaction. Alonso came from an ordinary background. When we first got married, people in our circle said he had climbed the social ladder through me. Behind his back, they mockingly called him a rich family's kept husband. I was angry because of those words. But he only said, Fernanda, it doesn't matter. One day, I'll become someone worthy of you. 10 years passed, and he did exactly what he promised, especially after my father passed away. No one called me Miss anymore. Everyone became more respectful and addressed me as Mrs. Martinez. But I found it harder and harder to see his true emotions through those dark eyes of his. Chapter 3. Seeing that I remained silent but refused to give in, Alonso slightly furrowed his brows, showing a trace of displeasure. Fine. He sounded as if he was reluctantly compromising. I'll transfer her to another department downstairs first. She still has a large amount of confidential information about the company's ongoing projects. He looked troubled. If she really leaves, I'll be the one panicking. I understood those concerns, and for a moment, I couldn't argue against him. Blame me for being too busy lately and making you overthink things. Alonso softened his voice as he comforted me. I'll take you shopping this weekend, okay? Looking at his gentle and affectionate expression, I instinctively reached into my pocket. The photographs inside felt so hot that my fingertips hurt. They showed a hotel where he and Romina stayed during a business trip away from home. The two of them were photographed entering the same room together. On the back, someone had written 2 sentences that appeared to be words of warning. Young lady, you've been too used to living in your own little world. Don't wait until the end to discover that the company is no longer yours. And neither is the man. The photos had been delivered to my home that morning. I came to the company today because I originally wanted to hear his explanation. But the closer I got to him, the more I found myself unable to ask him for the truth. Chapter 4. After leaving the office, I walked around the company for a while. Unexpectedly, I heard Romina crying in the restroom while several subordinates gathered around her, comforting her. That young lady never does anything at home. The moment she comes to the company, she starts causing trouble. What's she so arrogant about? Isn't she only relying on the family she was born into? Romina, don't be upset. CEO Martinez is only sending you downstairs to gain more experience. Once the right time comes, he'll definitely transfer you back to the top floor. A faint sneer rose in my heart. The right time? What exactly counted as the right time? But then I heard them continue. Isn't our company planning to change its name? It would be best to take advantage of the IPO and separate all those useless businesses from her family. By then, nothing inside or outside the company will have anything to do with her. Let's see how she can still boss everyone around. The company was changing its name? My heart tightened. Sinosilk was a name chosen by my father. It was also tied to the textile business where he built his empire. But times had changed. The market now favored the new energy business that Alonso had built from the ground up. Changing the company name before going public to better match the new direction was something I could completely understand and discuss. But why had Alonso Martinez not revealed even a hint of it to me? At that moment, a deliberately lowered voice came from outside, carrying a suggestive tone. After the company goes public, our Romina won't just return to the top floor. Even CEO Martinez's villa won't be out of reach. Romina immediately interrupted her. Don't say things like that. I suddenly felt completely drained. My fingers brushed against the photos in my pocket. And for a moment, my mind went blank. I didn't know whether the scene of Alonso standing with another woman in those photos was caused by some hidden reason, or whether it was simply inevitable. Chapter 5. Of course, I didn't go shopping with Alonso that weekend. Instead, I gave him a restructuring proposal, spin off his energy division and inject it into a separate subsidiary for an IPO. That way, no matter what name he wanted to change the company to, Sinosilk would remain Sinosilk. Alonso flipped through 2 pages of the documents. His eyes narrowed, and he remained silent for a long time. After the company goes public, financial reports will have to be disclosed. I also don't want those business lines dragging down the company's profits. It's better to separate them. The textile division's revenue had been declining year after year. Alonso probably wanted to cut it off long ago. By taking the initiative to offer him this solution, I was giving him a way out while also securing some priority for myself. What about the old division? He put down the documents, raised an eyebrow, and looked at me. You probably aren't interested in running it yourself, are you? I'm not someone who can endure that kind of hardship. I carefully chose my words. So I was thinking of merging the business line with Leonardo's. His fashion brand has been doing quite well, and he's willing to help me manage it. What I didn't say was that Leonardo and I had known each other since we were 3 years old. Our families had been close for 2 generations, and I trusted him. At that moment, I deliberately kept my tone casual, trying not to make Alonso suspicious. The company hasn't focused on this area for the past few years. Leaving it alone will only make it shrink gradually. Wouldn't it be better to just let him handle it? No need for him. Alonso's expression darkened. He casually threw the document into the trash can 3 meters away and said coldly, "The company won't change its name, and it won't be split up. If we're going public, then we'll do it together. I can afford to support it." I was speechless for a moment. Suddenly, he grabbed the wooden bar on the side of my chair and pulled me directly in front of him. Then he stood up abruptly, placing both hands on either side of my seat as he leaned down toward me. "Fernanda," his voice was low, carrying an unmistakable pressure. "I almost thought you were trying to separate yourself from me." There was a hint of probing in his tone. I lowered my eyes and explained as calmly as possible. "I just didn't want you to be put in a difficult position." Alonso let out a mocking laugh. His fingertips brushed along my cheek before finally resting on my chin. With a doting gesture, he gently pinched it. Then, with an undeniable force, he lifted my face. His intensely possessive gaze locked onto me. His voice was extremely low, carrying a trace of danger. "Fernanda, there is nothing left in this world that can put me in a difficult position." A tangled kiss fell upon me, as my breath was stolen away. His deep and dangerous voice sounded beside my ear. "From now on, I want everything." The image of Romina standing beside him flashed through my mind. Instinctively, I tried to retreat, but his hand firmly held the back of my head, leaving me nowhere to escape. Chapter 6. After returning to the company, Alonso immediately fired a large number of people. It was obvious that he was furious about the leak of information. People who didn't know the truth even thought I held significant power. After more than half a year without setting foot in the company, I had actually made him clean out most of the CEO's office. For a while, the number of people coming to me for help increased, but I understood clearly. The reason Alonso had made such a drastic move was simply because there were still many things he didn't want me to discover. Among those secrets, there might very well be Romina, the person who was clearly at the center of the storm, yet remained completely unharmed. Leonardo also brought me some bad news. Alonso suddenly joined forces with my brother and took down several of my projects. Leonardo was speechless. How many years has it been? Why is his jealousy only getting stronger with age? Fernanda, I really want to merge our businesses, but if things continue like this, I'll soon be sent off to a branch company to start from scratch. You can't leave. He absolutely could not leave now. Alonso was currently at the peak of his power, and everyone around him followed whichever way the wind blew. When the moment came to completely break ties, besides Leonardo, I didn't believe there was anyone else willing to take the risk and help me. I went to the company to find Alonso, but by coincidence, I ran into Romina coming out of his office. The moment she saw me, panic flashed across her face. She hurriedly explained. A colleague still habitually sends documents to me. I was afraid it would delay the work, so I just came by to deliver them. I couldn't be bothered to say anything. I simply gestured for her to leave. Looking at the tightly closed black door in front of me, I suddenly realized there was no point in coming here today. In Alonso's eyes, benefits had never been restrained by vague ideas like morality. And now, watching Romina's graceful figure disappear into the distance, I no longer knew how much weight my words still carried in his heart. I didn't knock. I turned around and left. Chapter 7. The moment I walked out of the company, I handed those photographs I had kept hidden for so long to Leonardo. I no longer looked at the images of my husband entering a hotel room with another woman. I simply said expressionlessly, "Take these to Alonso. Make it seem like you found out about it. Tell him in your name, or rather, threaten him. If he doesn't want me to know about his relationship with Romina, then he shouldn't touch you." Leonardo stared at me in disbelief. Alonso is keeping another woman outside? And you can actually tolerate this? You can even use this as leverage? Fernanda, are you okay? His eyes were filled with shock. It was as if my current reaction was even more unbelievable than Alonso's betrayal itself. Otherwise, what can I do? My expression remained emotionless. My voice was as cold as if it had been washed through ice. I had thought countless times about throwing the photos in Alonso's face and demanding that he explain himself. But the photos could be interpreted in many ways. Even if I confronted him, I might not be able to confirm the truth. And if he really had betrayed me, rather than taking this evidence to Alonso and making a useless accusation, it was better to use it to protect someone first. At least when the day came that we stood on opposite sides, I wouldn't be completely alone. I said calmly. Instead of betting on Alonso's feelings for me, I'd rather bet on whether I'm still valuable enough for him to keep deceiving. Leonardo stared at me for a long time, worry appearing in his eyes. I know you're hurting. He reached out, as if he wanted to hug me, but after hesitating for a moment, he only patted my shoulder. Don't be afraid. I'll help you. Chapter 8. The day Leonardo went to negotiate with Alonso, I was so anxious that I couldn't sit still at home. I had no choice but to drive out, wandering around aimlessly like a lost fly. I remembered how, after Alonso joined the company, his rapid rise had made many people wary of him. Even my father had been helpless. He had originally planned a 10-year path for Alonso to gradually take over the company, but Alonso had nearly completed it in only 3 years. So my father took the opportunity to reduce his authority and sent him to a branch company to build things from the ground up. I was afraid Alonso would hold a grudge, so I insisted on accompanying him to another city, but I couldn't adapt to the environment there and lost a significant amount of weight. Alonso packed up my things and insisted on sending me home. We ended up giving each other the cold shoulder for several days because of that. Until one night, I woke up in the middle of the night and discovered that the person who had been so stubborn and unyielding during the day would secretly touch my bones with heartache while I slept, quietly complaining under his breath, "Do you really think I don't want you by my side?" Back then, Alonso had just entered a completely new industry. Every step forward was difficult. and everyone doubted him. He endured everything silently and stubbornly pushed forward. Yet with me alone, he would explain every decision he made, every judgment, and even those uncertain guesses he had no confidence in. Fernanda, I only need you to believe in me. The day he finally became the only supplier for a leading industry giant, everyone said he remained calm and composed, never showing his emotions. Only I knew that he rushed home, lifted me into his arms, and spun me around again and again. Fernanda, I did it! Chapter 9. My father had warned me long ago. Alonso was too capable. His only concern was that I would end up raising a tiger that I could no longer control. Back then, I had been so proud. I had raised my eyebrows and replied, "He wouldn't dare." But at this moment, I finally understood how afraid I truly was. I was afraid that the sincere and gentle heart my husband once had would eventually be unable to withstand the ambition that kept growing under the nourishment of power. My car drove aimlessly until I arrived at the cemetery. Perhaps only here, under my father's steady and far-reaching gaze, could I find the strength to wait for the answer, to see whether Alonso would refuse to give Leonardo even a single cent because of something that supposedly didn't exist, or whether, out of guilt, he would agree, as long as Leonardo kept silent about that affair. Before sunset, I received Leonardo's call. He agreed. I gave a bitter self-mocking smile, and at that very moment, tears streamed down my face. Chapter 10. Why did you come back even later than me? Alonso looked completely calm, as if nothing had ever happened. I still wasn't used to facing a husband who had betrayed me. My expression froze for a moment before I forced a smile and had dinner with him. That night, the TV show was boring. He naturally pulled me into his arms, played with my hair between his fingers, and lowered his head to kiss me. I instinctively turned away. The tip of his nose brushed against my cheek as he nudged me gently again and again. Fernanda, I'm about to go on a business trip. You won't see me for at least a week. His reason for wanting intimacy was completely understandable. His attitude was also gentle and affectionate. Under normal circumstances, I had no reason to refuse. I hesitated as he slowly backed me into a corner. Then his phone rang. He casually swiped across the screen and tossed it onto the sofa. I thought he had turned it off, until a familiar female voice rang beside me. CEO Martinez. Adam will also be on the same flight as you for your business trip. He wants to ask if he can meet with you and discuss something. My entire body froze, but Alonso's expression didn't change at all. His lips remained pressed against my ear as he calmly told her how to handle it. I watched helplessly as he kissed me and undid my clothes while talking to another woman on the phone. Only after the call ended did I realize that perhaps I should ask a question. Romina? Isn't she? I'm not used to working with anyone else. Alonso stated it plainly. I transferred her back. I stared at him in disbelief. I couldn't believe that after receiving those photos today, he still dared to do this so openly. There was never anything between us. He pinched my cheek and comforted me half-heartedly. Fernanda, you should have calmed down by now. Chapter 11. During Alonso Martinez's business trip, Romina stayed at the company and temporarily handled his duties. For a while, she became the center of attention. She even came to my house once to pick up some documents for Alonso. I suspected that she didn't really need those documents that urgently. What she truly wanted was to step into this house openly, just to show me that she could. When I came out, Romina was standing in a corner of the living room, looking at the photos of Alonso and me together. The intense longing in her eyes was impossible to hide. Alonso looks so young in these photos. They must have been taken many years ago, right? Yeah, I replied indifferently. Romina gave a strange smile. He hasn't really taken many photos in recent years. My throat tightened. It felt as if my heart had been stabbed by a needle. A sharp pain spread through me. That makes sense. CEO Martinez has been too busy these past few years. She sounded troubled. Even I have to work with him all year round without a break. What made me tremble with anger at that moment was that I knew exactly what she was implying. Yet I could only pretend I didn't understand. 10 years. This was the result Alonso gave me after he finally became someone worthy of me. That night, Alonso called me. Mom, Wu said you didn't eat dinner. I'm not hungry. He didn't press further. Instead, he casually changed the subject. I heard Leonardo stayed. Are you happy? Does whether I'm happy matter? I had no energy to pretend. When you dealt with him, did you ever ask for my opinion? Fernanda, you still care about him. His words clearly carried jealousy, but I no longer knew whether Alonso's resentment toward Leonardo was proof that he loved me, or whether he was simply planting a future excuse so he wouldn't lose the upper hand later. While I was lost in thought, I heard him say, "Forget it, Fernanda. When I come back, let's have a child." Chapter 12. Alonso had always been exceptional in his ability to act. Once he decided we should try for a baby, it immediately became his highest priority. The company was already extremely busy, yet the moment he returned, he actually cleared time in his schedule and went to the hospital with me for a medical checkup. I hadn't even thought of a reasonable excuse to refuse. Romina was there that day as well. She stayed by his side the entire time, reporting on the work she had handled during his business trip. After the fasting medical examination, we ate a nutritious meal directly at the hospital. There were 2 identical meals. Alonso handed one to me and one to Romina. Romina immediately lowered her head and began eating obediently, but my fingertips dug into my palms so hard that I couldn't swallow even a single bite. I once watched a movie. The male lead bought a gold necklace for his mistress. To save himself the trouble, he bought an identical one and sent it to his wife as well. But I, Fernanda, had never even worn the same clothes as another person in my entire life. Yet one day, I ended up sharing the same man with another woman. How is it? Don't you like the food? Alonso tore off a piece of bread and brought it toward my mouth. Eat a little, just fill your stomach. I turned my lips away. My voice came out almost hoarse. I'll eat when I get back. Chapter 13. That afternoon, Alonso was returning to the company. Coincidentally, he was going in the same direction as Romina. He asked the driver to take me home. Not long after the car left, I suddenly received a call from the hospital. They asked whether the medical examination package arranged by Mr. Martinez for MS. Romina should have the results sent together with mine to the address we provided. What medical examination package? I asked. The same package as yours. It took me a long time to understand what those words meant. He had arranged a pregnancy checkup for Romina as well? At that moment, I actually laughed. Over the next few hours, I repeatedly suppressed the urge to tear everything apart. If I admitted that I already knew the truth now, then the condition Leonardo was using to pressure Alonso would no longer exist. He still needed time to stabilize the situation. I kept convincing myself again and again to stay calm. I sat motionless in the living room until evening. Finally, I called the company and asked when Alonso had arrived. The answer I received was, Alonso never returned to the company. Of course, neither did Romina. Crash. Several loud shattering sounds rang out. The photo corner in the living room that I had personally arranged was completely knocked over. The once perfect smiles of the people who had loved each other were now covered by sharp shards of broken glass. The housekeeper rushed out in panic. Madam, what happened? I accidentally broke them. Please clean them up. I stepped over the broken pieces and walked upstairs with a blank expression. Chapter 14. Alonso didn't return until the middle of the night. His footsteps entered the bedroom. Heavy, slow. Eventually, they stopped beside me. A powerful sense of pressure enveloped me. My body instantly tensed, but I kept my eyes closed until his weight pressed down on me. His lips touched mine. I instinctively turned away and pushed him back, but he firmly grabbed my wrist and pinned it above my head. What are you doing? You tell me, Fernanda. Alonso smiled, with a slight hook of his finger. My loose sleepwear was easily pulled open. His cold lips brushed against my neck, moving lower and becoming more intense. For the sake of having a child, shouldn't we put in some effort? The thought that he might have just been intimate with another woman moments ago made my entire body twist with disgust. Don't. But he ignored me completely and continued. In the chaos, I managed to break free from his grip. Slap! My hand struck his face. Don't touch me! In the suffocating silence that followed, I heard a soft laugh. He slowly turned back toward me. Under the dim yellow light, his eyes were completely clear. There was no trace of desire in them. I was wondering how long you could keep pretending. Is this already too much for you? Chapter 15. The moment I saw the photos, I knew you were the one who gave them to Leonardo. Leonardo isn't capable of coming up with something like this, and he would never use your situation as a bargaining chip. Alonso pulled my slipping clothes back into place and brushed the messy hair away from my forehead. His movements were gentle, but the disappointment in his eyes was impossible to hide. Fernanda, if you suspected something between Romina and me, why didn't you just ask me directly? You actually used this to protect Leonardo? He accused me bitterly. You can even use something like this as a trade? If the conditions were right, would you let me keep another woman as well? I curled up and hugged myself. Give me an explanation. I have no interest in Romina, Alonso said coldly. For the past 2 years, I only let her stand out to create a target. I wanted those old men from my former circle to stop constantly circling around you and plotting against you. The key point about those photos is that the itinerary was confidential. The reason I entered an ordinary hotel room that day was precisely because I wanted to keep things low profile. The fact that even that was photographed proves Romina has a problem. I brought her back because I wanted her to make a move, so I could find the people behind this. I looked at him in disbelief, feeling a chill run through my body, but Alonso's tone remained unchanged. These past few days, I've already figured everything out. It was my competitor. At this point, using those photos to stir up trouble is nothing more than an attempt to create a marital crisis between us and disrupt the company's IPO process. I forced myself to speak. Then today only today, I did it deliberately. Alonso's voice was calm and composed, carrying the same sense of control he always had. I just wanted to see how far you were willing to go for Leonardo. What a brilliant little test this was. So he was completely innocent, and all the anxiety and fear that had kept me awake night after night during this time were nothing but my own doing. The pain I felt with every breath today, the kind that pierced straight through my chest, had all turned into a ridiculous joke. No wonder my father always said that someone like Alonso was not someone I could deal with using my little tricks. It turned out he really could toy with me as if I were nothing more than a piece in the palm of his hand. But I didn't want to play anymore. Alonso, I want a divorce. Chapter 16. Alonso's expression changed instantly. Fernanda, what are you talking about? I already told you Romina is not my lover. I sneered. Alonso, you don't actually think you're completely innocent, do you? As long as you gave the order, everything that happened today could have become real. So why should I believe that you will never change your heart? Where are you even taking this? His tone made it sound as if I was simply being unreasonable, but I became even more furious. You think I don't know why you set up this whole situation? Wasn't it just to make me admit my mistake? Make me obedient? Make me keep my distance from everyone? And make me look only to you for approval? Do you really love me? Or do you just want to control me? Alonso paused for a moment, then argued defensively. If you hadn't insisted on protecting Leonardo, none of this would have happened today. I was so angry that I laughed. If you truly respected me, you wouldn't have gone after a friend I trusted. If you had considered my feelings for even 1 second, you would have known how hurt I was today. Alonso was slightly stunned. His voice softened. Today, I went too far. Tomorrow, I'll give you a divorce settlement plan. I didn't want to stay in the same room with him anymore. I threw off the blanket and prepared to leave. Alonso grabbed my hand and tried his best to calm me down. Fernanda, calm down. There is no reason for us to get divorced. I love you. That has never changed. And it never will. I don't believe you. I cut him off sharply. Alonso, I don't believe you. I don't believe that I am already this powerless, letting everything happen according to your wishes. I don't believe that will lead me to a good ending. I don't believe that placing my future in the hands of a man and trusting that he will never change his heart can ever end well. Sooner or later, I will become like an old business line that has already finished draining its resources, something no longer valuable, yet too troublesome to abandon. And today, you have already made me experience that feeling in advance. I said every word clearly. I never want to feel that way a second time in my life. Alonso hurriedly said. Fernanda, that's unfair. I haven't done anything. Yes, you haven't done anything. I curled my lips slightly. But you have already shown me one thing. You can do whatever you want. Chapter 17. At first, Alonso thought I was just angry. He believed that comforting me a little would be enough. Until I met with a lawyer and brought out the separation plan. The energy business was built by you from the ground up, but the original funding still came from the company. So after the spin-off and listing, the company will retain shares according to the agreed ratio, and you can continue being responsible for operations. Alonso laughed in anger. Fernanda, don't be ridiculous. Is there any divorce reason in this world more absurd than this? Once I sign this document, what does that make me? Another company among the countless companies you've invested in? Another successful investment case in your portfolio? Fernanda, you are my woman, not my investor. What he said was wrong, because back then, what I invested was not only money and resources. I gave him my entire heart, my devotion, and my expectations for the rest of my life. It was just that now, I was taking them all back. But at this moment, I only felt more and more sorrowful. I no longer had the strength to argue, so my voice became even calmer. Alonso, things have already come to this point. Resolving this quietly is better for both of us. Not for me. Alonso threw the document onto the table. His face darkened as he spoke aggressively. After you cut ties with me, you'll immediately merge industries with Leonardo. In the future, every penny I earn will have to be divided up to support the business you and Leonardo build together? Fernanda, stop dreaming. I thought for a moment before saying, that situation won't last forever. After the company goes public, I'll find a chance to cash out and leave. Fernanda, Alonso was furious, yet his voice became lower instead. But it was heavy, like the sky before a storm, as if it was about to collapse at any moment. You didn't understand what I meant. Fernanda, I mean, I won't allow you to leave me. Chapter 18. I went upstairs and began packing my luggage. Alonso followed me in. His voice was so low that it sent chills down my spine. Where are you going? I'm going back to my family's old house. Starting today, we're separating. No matter how complicated things became between us, I could at least prepare myself first and file for divorce after the 2-year separation period was over. Alonso silently watched me pack. After a long while, he slowly spoke. If you leave for one day, I'll fire one of those old executives. My hands froze. For a moment, I almost thought I had misheard him. You don't usually manage the company, so you don't know how greedy those old men from my former circle are. The dirt I have on them is enough to fire them openly, and even enough to send them to prison. I kept those parasites around before because I didn't want to make things difficult for you. But if you're gone, I promise you this, they won't have a single good day. Alonso, you. I was so angry that I couldn't even finish my sentence. Yet I could no longer continue packing. Fernanda, you know I can do it. This was probably the first time Alonso had shown me his fangs. I finally understood why so many powerful figures in the business world feared him. Alonso took my clothes out of the suitcase one by one, including the one still in my hands, and put them all back into the wardrobe. Finally, he closed the cabinet door. As if nothing had ever happened, I clenched my fists, trembling with anger, but he wrapped his arms tightly around me from behind. He lowered his head and brushed against my neck, burying his face into my hair and skin. It was an extremely domineering gesture, yet his voice sounded unbearably helpless and soft. Fernanda, there are problems between us. I'll find a way to fix them. Give me some time. Don't leave me. Otherwise, I don't even know what I might do. Chapter 19. Alonso and I fell into a cold war. All the photo frames in the living room had been replaced with new ones. Their shapes and styles were exactly the same as before, as if they had never been smashed. But every day, I hurried past them without sparing them another glance. There were now more nourishing soups on the dining table. I recognized the taste. They were the same soups Alonso had personally made for me when he was helping me take care of my health in the past. So I never touched a second spoonful. Alonso moved all his work back home, except for some necessary outings. He was almost always around the house every day. The one who came and went early and returned late was actually me. While consulting lawyers for a stronger separation plan, I also ran around making connections and gathering resources, preparing for the future division of the company. To avoid disrupting the bigger picture, I only told outsiders that I was restructuring the industries and used that as a way to test their attitudes. Over the years, Many people from the old division had been pushed to the sidelines within the company. A lot of them had already been feeling uneasy. Now that they heard I was preparing to rebuild my position, they naturally responded one after another. But just when I had finally stabilized everyone's confidence, Alonso suddenly released an internal announcement. It stated that the company's new energy business would expand in the future and a new team would be formed. He deliberately planned to select people from the old division, and those who performed well would receive equity incentives. The promise was far too tempting. The old division immediately became restless. Some people instantly forgot what kind of person Alonso was and could not wait to follow him on the spot. I was suddenly pushed into an extremely passive position. That night, when I returned home, Alonso greeted me as if nothing had happened. "Fernanda, you're back? I've been waiting for you for dinner for a long time." At that moment, he was not wearing his usual suit. He was only dressed in casual home clothes, with his hair naturally falling in a soft, messy way. When he smiled, he even looked strangely obedient and innocent for someone his age. Yet it was this very person who had turned all my efforts during this period into nothing with a single announcement. I didn't look at him again and turned to walk upstairs. The first person who couldn't stand it was actually Alonso. He grabbed my wrist, irritation rising in his eyes. "Fernanda, how much longer are you going to keep this up? I know I was too busy these past few years and didn't have time to accompany you, which made you overthink things. Recently, I've put all my work aside. I stay around you every day trying to make you happy. Why can't you see any of that?" I only wanted to laugh coldly. On the surface, he looked like he had abandoned his work and stayed home. But in reality, nothing had been delayed. I heard that during this period, he had even used Romina to feed false information to his competitor, causing the other side to suffer a heavy blow and become completely stuck. After that, Romina disappeared. It was as if she had sunk into the deep ocean, leaving behind no signs of struggle, not even a single bubble rising to the surface. Countless people were curious, but no one dared to speculate. They only became even more afraid of Alonso. Someone this capable, no wonder the moment he showed even a little kindness and acceptance, so many people from the old division became eager to follow him. At this moment, compared to anger, what I felt more was frustration and self-blame. If I had not supported all of his decisions over these years, if I had not prioritized the company's limited resources toward his new industries, I would not have ended up in such a passive position. I looked at him coldly, brushed his hand away, and prepared to leave. Unable to endure it anymore, Alonso shouted, "What exactly did I do to make you look at me like that? You don't know what you did?" I sneered. "If you truly want to make those people from the old division rich, I won't stop you. But are you sincere? You're only using them to restrain me. Alonso, you're truly despicable." But Alonso reacted as if he had been wronged. He became agitated. "How am I wrong for doing this? Am I supposed to just watch you leave me and do nothing?" I gritted my teeth. "Do you know why you're able to do this? Do you think that all these years, every time I supported your decisions, every time I prioritized the company's resources toward your new empire, I didn't know that I was weakening the old division and strengthening you? But I never hesitated for even a second, because I trusted you. Because in my eyes, we were one. There was no old or new, no yours or mine. We only supported whichever business had the best opportunity and put the best resources where they were needed most. But what about you? You never considered my father's business as a part of yourself. You only wanted to let it survive or die on its own." "I didn't." Alonso immediately denied it and quickly explained, "I just couldn't take care of everything at the same time. You know how quickly the new business has grown these years." Chapter 20. I interrupted him directly. "I can understand that you don't want to spend your energy on an industry you no longer value. But at the very least, please don't use the things I want to protect as leverage against me. Otherwise, I really might regret marrying you in the first place." A trace of hurt flashed through Alonso's eyes, but his expression remained stubborn. He reached out to hold my hand. "Fernanda, don't say things like that. Please don't say those things. I just don't want you to leave me." I gently turned my face away. "The methods you've shown me today, your power, and everything you have done to me, they are exactly why I have to leave you. Alonso, no one can sleep peacefully beside a beast. I did not stop my efforts to reorganize the old division. Since Alonso wanted to drag things out, I would make sure this time was spent creating something valuable. That day, Leonardo and I went out of town to inspect the market. Unexpectedly, we ran into Romina at a small company I had invested in before. She was holding an almost blank resume and looking for a job. Naturally, she was rejected by the boss. They say she has experience, but when you ask her anything, she knows nothing. We can't even do a proper background check. Who would dare hire someone with such an unclear history? This time, the look Romina gave me was filled with undisguised resentment and hatred. CEO Martinez made me disappear from a city and disappear from this industry. He forbade me from using any of my work experience at Sinosilk. Otherwise, he would accuse me of business crimes and send me to prison. Are you satisfied now? I was secretly shocked by how well Alonso understood human nature. The best way to make a fallen pawn who once stood at the top fall completely and still keep their mouth shut was to make them understand that there was an even deeper abyss waiting below. But my expression remained calm. How he handles his traitors has nothing to do with me. I didn't betray him. If I had known Adam wanted to ruin the company's IPO, how could I have helped him? Romina shouted hoarsely. Adam told me he loved you. He said that as long as I cooperated a little, he could make you and Alonso separate. Then he could have you. And I could. How could I possibly betray Alonso? I loved him so much. I was stunned for a moment. I never expected that after so many years in the business world, Romina would actually believe such a ridiculous lie. Adam had indeed shown interest in me before, but if Alonso had really destroyed everything I had and left me with nothing, Adam would never have married me. At most, he would have taken advantage of my downfall and kept me as a mistress for his own amusement. Leonardo also sneered when he heard this and shook his head, looking away as if he had lost interest. What are you laughing at? Romina's voice was filled with anger, but the target of her hatred still turned back to me. I was foolish and delusional, but how worthy are you? For all these years, I was the one who stayed up late working overtime with Alonso. I was the one who cared about whether he ate well and stayed warm. More than half of my day was spent fighting alongside him. But what about you? There was a time when Alonso was so busy that he hadn't returned home for 2 days. He asked you to come to the company and have lunch with him. And you actually refused. Romina shook her head in disbelief. You actually refused? How many people want just one meal with him but can't even get through the door? I remembered the incident she mentioned. That day, I really did have something else planned. I had only explained a couple of sentences when I suddenly felt speechless and changed my tone. But even if I had been free, I still wouldn't have gone to the company just to have lunch with him. So many of you treat him like a king. I'm actually afraid he would get addicted to being worshipped. First he summons me to accompany him for meals, and later he might stop coming home altogether, sleep wherever he wants, and summon me whenever he wants me to serve him. Who do you think you are to act so superior? Romina's eyes became even more filled with jealousy. Alonso doesn't need you anymore. Even now, he still accommodates you and spoils you because he is a good person. Do you really think it's because you're so special? Looking at that face that seemed desperate to replace me, I felt as if I could see countless other women outside who were just as eager to become Alonso's precious one. For a moment, I felt lost. In my eyes, Alonso's compromises and patience had always been his way of loving me. Before, I never saw them as him trying to please me. And now, I would never see them as some kind of charity he gave me. But looking at the gratitude and indebtedness Romina believed I should have, I suddenly felt a little sad. Perhaps Alonso thought the same way. Chapter 21. The news that I had met Romina quickly reached Alonso. That night, I saw him at home. She didn't say any nonsense to you, did she? Alonso looked slightly nervous and emphasized again. I really have no personal relationship with her. I nodded weakly and tried to walk past him upstairs. Alonso grabbed me and said unhappily, since she no longer matters, since you already know it was all a misunderstanding, why are you still insisting on divorce? I've already shown my sincerity with the company as well. From now on, no matter what I do, I'll bring everyone along. Fernanda, what else do you want me to do? The grievance and confusion in his eyes perfectly matched the feeling of worthlessness Romina had shown toward me. What else do you want me to do? I repeated his words slowly, one by one. Then I gave a self-mocking smile. I really don't have the right to ask you to do anything anymore. Alonso's expression changed slightly. Fernanda, I won't allow you to look at me with that expression. He impatiently grabbed my wrist and pressed me against the door. A trace of hostility was buried deep in his eyes. You've been meeting Leonardo every day recently, and I've endured it without questioning you. What else do you want from me? Tell me clearly, is your ridiculous reason for divorce just an excuse because you've fallen for someone else? I shoved him away forcefully. You know very well that I don't like Leonardo. The reason I want a divorce is not ridiculous at all. The ridiculous one is you. You are the ridiculous one. The woman in those photos could have been anyone. The point is, why did I endure everything in silence? If this had happened 10 years ago, would I have hesitated even for a second? If this had happened 10 years ago, would you have dared not to explain everything to me immediately? On the way back after meeting Romina, I couldn't stop replaying Alonso's reaction during those days after he took the photos back. During the most humiliating and painful moment of my life, he showed no sympathy or hesitation. Instead, he seemed almost excited. He watched me panic and suffer, carefully savoring my fear and restraint, like he was punishing a disobedient pet. Romina was nothing more than a cat teaser in his hands, and when it fell into his possession, he casually used it to tease me, manipulate me, and control me. I couldn't help asking him, Alonso, if this had happened before, would you have allowed me to misunderstand you and another woman? Would you have watched me become terrified and anxious without doing anything? Would you have deliberately made me hurt? The moment I asked, I already knew the answer. He wouldn't. Back then, he had lost his power, been transferred away, watched years of effort disappear overnight, and even fallen into conflict with my father. But the moment he saw my red eyes, he immediately swallowed all his unwillingness and lowered his head to apologize to my father. At that time, his new business was facing financial problems. I tried every possible way to help him, but he would rather spend 10 times more effort himself than let me lower my pride and ask others for help. He told me, Fernanda, the things you refused to do before marrying me, you are not allowed to do after marrying me either. The Alonso from before protected my pride. He couldn't bear to let me suffer even the slightest grievance. But now, he had already learned to use another woman to humiliate me. At that moment, I felt an overwhelming sadness. My vision blurred with tears, and it felt as if I could no longer see the person in front of me clearly. I'm sorry. I don't know why things became like this. Alonso reached out in panic, trying to wipe away my tears. Fernanda, I didn't mean to hurt you. I just don't like seeing you rely on another man. If you were just a little more obedient. I curled the corner of my lips and turned away from him, exhausted. I only felt that everything between us had already come to an end. Alonso, you need to understand, if I had been someone who obeyed everything, I would never have stubbornly chosen to marry you in the first place. Chapter 22. For a period of time afterward, I didn't see Alonso at all, only the roses that were replaced with fresh ones every day at home, and the calls my aunt secretly made to report my mood to him, constantly reminded me of his presence, until the anniversary of my father's death. Before we publicly announced our divorce, we still had to attend occasions like this together. In previous years, the memorial ceremony would often turn into a confrontation where my uncles criticized Alonso's authoritarian decisions. But this year, the atmosphere was much calmer, because recently, Alonso had indeed shown more substantial sincerity in winning everyone over. The old and new divisions did not know the truth. They thought we were preparing for some major move. So for the first time, they united completely and worked together toward the company's listing. I suppose I still didn't see as far as you young people did. One of my uncles praised Alonso's decisions, although in the past, he had always been the loudest person opposing Alonso's plans. Fernanda really has good judgment. She found herself such a capable son-in-law. I forced a smile. Alonso naturally put his arm around me. Marrying Fernanda is my blessing. I was speechless, seeing how well you two are getting along. Your father can finally rest assured, someone cautiously asked. I heard some time ago that the company was going to change its name, and some people even said the old division would be removed. I suppose those were just rumors? I was preparing my words, ready to give them some warning in advance. But Alonso tightened his arm around my waist and spoke solemnly. The company will not change its name. And there will be no split. Thanks to everyone's support. The company has developed quite well these past 2 years. All of you are the company's veterans. From now on, we'll continue moving forward together. If there's meat, everyone gets meat. If there's soup, everyone gets soup. Under everyone's expectant gazes, I had no choice but to cooperate with him and pretend to be a loving couple until the memorial ceremony ended. Only after getting into the car did I pull my hand away from his. Alonso, have I not made myself clear enough? The calm smile he had shown in front of everyone disappeared. He lowered his eyes in exhaustion, but his stubbornness remained. I don't want to separate from you. Fernanda, can you give me some time? The things you don't like, I can correct them one by one, but I don't want to spend even another second with you. He looked at me with wounded eyes, even appearing somewhat lost. Fernanda, what am I supposed to do with you? Chapter 23. The entire way was silent. When we arrived home, there was still a guest waiting for us. Sam was the longest-serving employee at the textile factory. Miss, I'm retiring this month. I came today specifically to thank you and CEO Martinez. He sighed emotionally. Over these years, I've seen many factories of all sizes shut down, and many workers lose their jobs. I was able to stay in one position until retirement and even receive such good retirement benefits because the former president, as well as you and CEO Martinez, led the company so well. Alonso looked distracted, clearly not listening carefully. He had heard countless words of gratitude like this before, but I felt deeply moved. If Alonso had not overcome countless obstacles and transformed the company into a completely different industry back then, perhaps we would have ended up like those competing companies that were abandoned by the times. To reach where we were today, Alonso was undoubtedly talented, but I knew better than anyone how hard he had worked. My father always said I had been spoiled and couldn't endure the hardship of running a real business. The only reason I wasn't completely useless was because I had a little cleverness and knew how to make investments. But my venture capital fund could never carry the livelihoods of so many people. Alonso was the one who took on that enormous responsibility. He was the person who built an empire in this new territory, brick by brick. He had never liked taking credit for his achievements. Even now, he still looked indifferent. But deep inside, I felt a trace of admiration and gratitude. These are the last 2 sets of clothes I made at the factory. They're for children. Sam opened the gift box. 1 set for a boy and 1 set for a girl. Alonso's wandering gaze finally settled on the 2 tiny outfits. His dark eyes suddenly shone brightly. Speaking of which, when Miss was born, I also gave her a little outfit like this. Sam smiled honestly. I quickly took them and carefully held them in my arms. My fingertips brushed over the tiny, adorable clothes. The fabric was unbelievably soft. Thinking back, with all the medical checkups we had done before and the days we spent staying at home together, it was no wonder people had mistaken us for preparing to have a baby. I wish you and CEO Martinez an early blessing of children and a lifetime of happiness together. At that moment, holding someone's sincere blessing in my hands, I couldn't bring myself to deny it. Thank you. We will. Chapter 24. That night, Alonso came home drunk. He sat carelessly at the bottom of the stairs, struggling and refusing to let anyone touch him. The night was cold and deep, and I was afraid of disturbing more people, so I had no choice but to go over and help him. He turned his head and buried his face against my neck, taking a deep breath. Then he immediately calmed down. His face rested in the hollow of my shoulder as he murmured, "Fernanda, do you like roses or lilies of the valley?" "What?" "During the memorial ceremony, you smiled when you saw that bunch of lilies of the valley at the cemetery," he said with frustration. "I send you roses every day, but you don't even spare them a glance." The lilies of the valley were brought by Leonardo, but the reason I smiled was simply because I was speechless at him. Anyone could tell those flowers had been picked from my family's old house. I was only laughing because he had taken the easy way out. Besides, weren't those flowers for my father's memorial? They weren't meant for me. But at this moment, Alonso was trapped in his own logic and refused to let it go. "Fernanda, did you fall for him?" I didn't want to answer that question again. I helped him onto the bed and turned around to leave, but he grabbed my wrist. "Fernanda, I'm jealous of Leonardo." He looked up at me, But his eyes were lowered with disappointment. I know you two are just friends. Otherwise, with your families being equally matched, with the timing and circumstances all working in his favor, what chance would I have had? But I'm still jealous of him. Alonso gave a self-mocking smile. I can't believe I'm actually jealous of an idiot. I was speechless for a moment. Leonardo had spent years plotting and building his power until he could stand against his own elder brother. He was not an idiot. It was just that Alonso himself was far too extraordinary. Alonso held my hand against his face, lost in his memories. When I had nothing back then, I truly couldn't compare to the second son of the Leonardo family. I could understand why your father didn't want you to marry me. But why did he still say, right before he passed away, that things would have been easier if you had married Leonardo? Alonso looked up at me. I worked so hard to prove myself to him. Did he still think I wasn't good enough? It wasn't like that. I had never seen Alonso reveal such a vulnerable side. For a moment, I couldn't pull my hand away. So I sat beside him and explained. My father had indeed casually said once that if I had been with Leonardo, he wouldn't have needed to worry about me. But it wasn't because Alonso was not good enough. It was because Alonso was too powerful. Whether it was because he had lingering resentment after being sent away to manage a branch company, or because he wanted to hide his true strength. Afterward, he deliberately kept his distance from the main family. The achievements reported back were not even 1/10 of his actual ability. Before my father passed away, he was unable to reach him despite his concerns. That was why, in his worry and helplessness, he said those words. Do you know why I wanted to become this strong? Alonso asked. I was afraid that if I wasn't strong enough, I would lose you. Back then, I worked desperately and fought so hard. But overnight, I lost everything and had to start again from zero. He gave a bitter smile. Actually, I didn't care that much about those things. Do you know what I was most afraid of back then? Your father could easily take away the career I had spent so many years building. I was afraid he could also easily take you away from me. At that time, I told myself, I have to build a business that belongs completely to me. I have to keep becoming stronger without limits. Strong enough that no one can ever take you away from me. I want to plant this rose in my own garden. Fernanda, I want your entire world to be me. This was the first time Alonso had revealed what was truly inside him. It was possessive, powerful, and deeply self-centered. Yet it shocked me so much that I remained speechless for a long time. Alonso became dissatisfied with my silence. He lowered his head and rubbed his face against mine, complaining, if I'm too weak, I can't keep you. If I'm too strong, you think I'm dangerous. Fernanda, what exactly do you want me to be? Do you really like that useless man who struggles even to inherit his family business? Here we go again, Alonso. The reason I could be friends with Leonardo for so many years is because he is safe. But the reason we can only ever be friends is also because he is safe. After a pause, I admitted. But you are different. From the very first moment I saw you, you were different from everyone else. Chapter 25. Alonso's expression relaxed slightly, and his eyes stared straight into mine. His expectant look seemed as if he wanted to hear me say it again. Go to sleep. I avoided that overly intense gaze and got up, preparing to leave. But he suddenly wrapped an arm around my waist and pulled me back onto the bed. His head rested against my shoulder as he whispered, Fernanda, have a child with me. I froze. My mind immediately flashed back to the 2 adorable sets of children's clothes I had received that day. So tiny, so soft, soft enough to touch the deepest part of one's heart. I quickly pushed away that fleeting moment of emotion and calmly said, You're drunk. I'm not drunk. He rubbed his face against my neck with force. Fernanda, have a child with me. I'll give him everything. My shares, my assets, everything I have spent my entire life fighting for, I'll give it all to him. Don't you believe me anymore? Fernanda, I will only have one child in this life. Our child. At that moment, I wasn't sure whether he was truly sober, but what he said was indeed the best solution for the company's overall situation. If we had a child, all the conflicts over interests would be resolved. But a child also meant endless entanglement between Alonso and me. I hesitated, yet Alonso leaned over and kissed me, his 5 fingers intertwined with mine, pressing our joined hands against the bed. Don't reject me, Fernanda. I've worked so hard. How can you still not understand how much I love you? His low, hoarse voice even carried a hint of sobbing. In the end, I did not pull away. Chapter 26. The next morning, when I woke up, I heard the sound of water running in the bathroom. Alonso was taking a shower. I immediately became tense. The unnatural soreness in my body reminded me of what had happened last night. A moment of losing myself and agreeing had allowed him to push further and further. What followed was an entire night of increasingly intense demands. But now, as the sun rose, my rationality slowly returned. The problems between us had never been solved. How could I have agreed to have a child with him based only on a verbal promise? The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I became. In the end, I almost jumped out of bed to look for contraceptive pills. My fingers trembled as I pushed a pill out of the package and was about to put it into my mouth. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded from behind me. "What are you doing?" Alonso's hair was still dripping with water. A damp, suppressed emotion filled his eyes. His gaze moved away from the contraceptive pills and fell back on me. He stubbornly looked at me, as if he wanted me to confirm it with my own mouth. I felt a little guilty, but I refused to show weakness at that moment. "I don't want to have your child." The corners of Alonso's eyes instantly turned red. The emotions in his eyes were so heavy that they almost suffocated me. At that moment, my phone rang. It was Leonardo. I remembered something, and my expression changed immediately. I reached out to grab the phone, but Alonso easily stopped my hand. He took the phone away and answered the call right in front of me. Leonardo's voice immediately came through, sounding as if he was taking credit for his achievement. "Fernanda, I've already accurately leaked the news of your marital crisis to the T-side's representative." I made it sound extremely serious. Their expression changed the moment they heard it. "If this divorce affects the company's IPO financing and prevents us from securing the world's top client, then even if Alonso agrees, his investors won't. Alonso has been secretly preparing for cooperation with the T-side for so long. This time, you really hit him where it hurts. Just wait for good news. He has no choice but to give in this time." I watched helplessly as Alonso's face slowly turned pale. Only then did Leonardo finally notice something was wrong. "Fernanda?" Alonso violently threw the phone. With a loud crack, it smashed against the wall and shattered into pieces. Soon after, his own phone began ringing urgently. Alonso ignored it. He stared straight at me, his eyes filled with both devastation and fury. "Fernanda, you planned this against me?" I had no way to argue. Actually, when I met Romina last time and listened to her passionately confess how much she loved Alonso, I caught an important piece of information. Adam, a person's greatest desire is often the thing their opponent understands best. Adam had been fighting for cooperation with the T-side, so I deduced that Alonso was probably doing the same. Successfully going public and obtaining enough financing was likely a necessary condition for Alonso to cooperate with the T company. On the way back that day, I had already come up with this plan. The battle between Alonso and me could only have 3 possible outcomes. If we reconciled, it would be a win-win situation. If we separated peacefully, we would both get what we wanted. Only if we completely turned against each other in public would it become a true lose-lose situation. That was why, before reaching a resolution, we had both silently agreed to keep everything hidden from the outside world. Chapter 27. But Alonso was more stubborn than I had imagined. I had no choice but to use a stronger deterrent. Before the news was truly exposed to everyone and before both of us suffered losses, I had to use the business opportunity he valued most as the price. Although everything had been planned in advance, when I saw the pain in his eyes at that moment, my first reaction was actually guilt. I even wanted to explain myself, but Alonso was far too intelligent. After thinking for only a moment, he understood everything. "The T-side's representative is only staying in the country for 2 days. Because of your father's memorial ceremony, I delayed our meeting by 1 day. You seized that gap and had Leonardo release the news of our marital crisis to them, didn't you?" I remained silent, which was the same as admitting it. Alonso's eyes instantly turned bloodshot. "Fernanda, you even used your father's memorial ceremony to scheme against me?" My heart suddenly became chaotic, but my throat felt blocked, and I couldn't say a single word. Alonso grabbed my chin and forced me to look up. I was forced to raise my head and instinctively grabbed his arm. but my fingers touched the veins bulging beneath his skin. My heart tightened. I turned my head, wanting to escape his grip, but he pulled me back even harder. "Fernanda, tell me." Those sharp eyes, cold enough to make me tremble, locked onto me. They did not miss the slightest change in my expression. "Was even sleeping with me last night part of your plan? Was it all just to buy time for Leonardo to make his move?" I hurriedly shook my head. "No, it wasn't." Alonso looked away. He quickly stood up, picked up a dress, and pressed it against me. "If it wasn't, then change your clothes and come meet the T-Side's representative with me. I want you to personally tell them that our marriage is fine and that there are no problems between us." I knew very clearly that Alonso was trying to completely block my escape route right there. But if I missed this most critical window of time for him, it would be extremely difficult for me to find another way to restrain him. No matter how complicated and painful my feelings were at that moment, my rationality gave me a clear answer. No, I absolutely could not lose control of the situation. "I'm not going." I avoided his gaze and put my hands behind my back, refusing to touch the dress. In the suffocating silence, I heard my own voice trembling, yet every word remained clear. "Unless you sign the divorce papers, I can accompany you to any event. I can pretend to be a loving couple with you until this matter no longer affects the company at all, but you have to sign first." His burning palm pressed against my chest through the dress. His fingers slowly tightened, as if he wanted to tear out the heart beating beneath them. For a moment, pain twisted through my chest, inside and out. I forced myself not to move. I gritted my teeth and held my ground. "Fine, Fernanda." Alonso laughed softly from the depth of his pain. After a long while, he finally let out a low, hoarse voice. "Just like your father Duncan's daughter, you really have a ruthless heart." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I could only watch helplessly as he stood up and walked away step by step. The back that was usually so confident and full of pride now moved slowly and defeatedly, like a dog that had lost a fight. Chapter 28. In the end, Alonso still did not go to meet the T-Side's representative that day. I received news that he had been in a car accident on the way there and had been sent straight to the hospital. My heart immediately tightened with worry, but I had no idea which hospital he was in or how serious his injuries were. During that endless wait without any information, I felt as if an invisible hand was gripping my throat. With every passing second, I found it harder and harder to breathe. It was not until Leonardo came to my house and saw me. "Weren't you in the car?" I heard that the Martinez couple were both involved in the accident. While I was still confused, my aunt came over after answering a phone call. "Madam, sir said your phone was broken, so you might not have seen his messages. He asked me to tell you again. He said the accident was fake. He is fine, but for the next 10 days, please do not leave the house. Stay here and recover. He will arrange everything else." My blank mind slowly started working again. I quickly understood Alonso's intention. He didn't want to confirm the marital crisis in front of the T-Side, so he simply created a fake car accident. I felt it was incredibly absurd, yet I had to admit that his delaying tactic was almost flawless. I was terrified. I thought he was going to drag you down with him. Leonardo was still making jokes without any sense of seriousness, but I couldn't laugh. My hands kept trembling. My throat was blocked for a long time before I finally let out a hoarse voice filled with lingering fear. I was terrified. Leonardo was silent for a moment before asking, "If something really happened to him, would you regret it?" I froze. "I don't know, Fernanda." Leonardo let out a soft laugh. "When the answer in your heart doesn't match what your rational mind expects, you say you don't know." He sighed. "Think about it carefully. Do you really want to separate from him? I know that after your father passed away, you've always lacked a sense of security, and Alonso has become more and more controlling. But since you work in venture capital, you should understand better than anyone that if you are too focused on preventing every possible risk, you will also lose countless possibilities." I thought perhaps I really should sit down with Alonso and have a serious conversation, but Alonso disappeared. Some people said he had been recovering in the hospital. Some said he had already flown out to meet clients. Others said he had gone overseas to buy mines. I couldn't ask anyone where my own husband was, so when he refused to give me any information, I became the person who knew the least about his whereabouts. The company continuing to operate normally was the only sign he gave me that he still existed. But many matters that he had always handled personally before were now pushed to me for decisions. During this period, I also met a new manager, Oriana. Oriana was a legend in the industry. She had started as a sewing factory worker and climbed step by step, eventually becoming the head of the China region for an international fast fashion brand. She understood both the market and design, and Alonso had actually managed to recruit her? I didn't even know when he had started approaching her. Someone like her could never be recruited easily. He must have already been in contact with her before he left. Chapter 29. Sure enough, Oriana said. I never expected CEO Martinez to show such sincerity, even with his busy schedule. He came to meet me 3 times, and each time he managed to ease my concerns more. My previous company also had some matters that needed to be handled, which delayed me for several months. I'm sorry for making you and CEO Martinez wait for so long. I quickly replied. It's our honor that you were willing to consider joining Synopsis. May I ask something out of curiosity? Oriana still clearly had some concerns. After Synopsis entered the energy industry, it has already been riding the biggest wave and growing rapidly. Why would you still spend so much effort returning to clothing and textiles, an industry that requires so much hard work for relatively modest returns? I paused slightly before explaining. Recently, content-related industries have also become extremely popular in the secondary market, but the foundation that allows such industries to exist is still that people have enough food and clothing. Only after people satisfy their basic survival needs will they be willing to spend more money on spiritual and cultural products. So the benefits enjoyed by that industry were not created by itself alone. They were also supported by other industries. The textile industry once benefited from the opportunities of its era as well. But times change, and now other industries have taken the spotlight. Every stage of economic development has its own major opportunities, but real industries will always remain the foundation. Oriana nodded repeatedly. That is a truly broad perspective. You flatter me. As an investor, I actually work across many industries. I also love chasing opportunities and trends, but the textile industry will always be the most special one to me. I picked up an old photograph and showed it to her. It was the opening ceremony of Synopsis' first store. My father was wearing a formal suit, cutting the ribbon, and the baby wrapped in red cloth in his arms was me. Every time a new store opened, my father would take me with him for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. From being held in his arms, to eventually holding my hand as we cut the ribbon together, my voice became slightly choked. I grew up together with Synopsis, so no matter how the times change, I will continue protecting what he wanted to protect. Right now, Synopsis truly needs an outstanding manager like you to take care of this business. My talent is not in running real industries, so I won't interfere too much with daily operations. You will have the greatest possible space to demonstrate your abilities. Oriana's eyes lit up. To be honest, before coming here today, I still had some doubts, but you have given me a great deal of confidence. CEO Martinez told me that his wife has always managed Synopsis Venture Capital Fund and is an excellent investor with unique insights into industrial ecosystems. After meeting you today, I can see that he was right. She extended her hand toward me. I look forward to learning from you in the future. As I shook her hand, I felt the faint calluses on her palm. My respect for her grew even stronger. Together. Then, Chapter 30. After Oriana joined the company, the old division finally had someone they could truly rely on. My cooperation with Leonardo no longer seemed as necessary. Alonso always handled things in a way that was unexpectedly flawless. He could accomplish multiple goals with one move, leaving me both helpless and unable to find any fault with him. Everything I had tried to change was gradually pushed back to where it started. Yet Alonso himself never showed up again. He simply let the roses at home wither and the entire house sink into silence. The emptiness in my heart grew larger day by day, but my longing for him became clearer with each passing day. I wanted so badly to see him. There were still important things I wanted to tell him. I kept asking his assistant when Alonso would return, but the answer was always that no one knew. Sometimes, I could clearly hear his voice through the phone, yet he never spoke to me. His absence lasted so long that it felt as if he would never come back. His distance was so complete that it felt as if he no longer loved me. I admitted that I was still a little hurt. That day, I was sitting on the sofa reading a book. As if I suddenly sensed something, I looked up. At a glance, I saw Alonso standing at the doorway. I didn't know how long he had been there. He looked at me from a distance. His gaze was focused and deep, as if suppressing countless emotions. It felt like I had not seen this person for an entire century. There was a faint unfamiliarity about him. His hair had grown slightly longer. He seemed much thinner. Even his clothes looked a little wrinkled. But this unfamiliar feeling was not complete. It was only a few new changes added onto the person I had always known. So much so that I stared at him greedily for a long time before slowly walking toward him. "You're back?" "Yeah." He stood still, looking at me without moving, but his voice was strangely calm. I remembered all those times I had called his assistant asking when he would return, and how he had avoided speaking to me every time. Facing this coldness, I suddenly didn't know what to do. I didn't even know whether he still wanted to hear what I wanted to say. We simply stood there, looking at each other. The air was as tense as our heartbeats. No one knew whether what was about to happen would be a confession or a farewell. We spoke at the same time. Alonso smiled faintly. "Let me go first. I'll give you all my shares. I don't want the company either. From now on, I'll work for the company as a hired CEO. Fernanda, from now on, I'll work for you." I froze. For a moment, I couldn't fully understand what he meant. Was he planning to leave my life completely and only exist beside me as a cold professional relationship? A huge sense of loss instantly wrapped around me. My throat tightened until I could barely speak. But Alonso kept looking at me, carefully. He said his final sentence. "If I do this, can we not get divorced?" I stood there in a daze. After a long while, I finally laughed, and I finally dared to tell him this. "I'm pregnant." Alonso's body instantly froze. He looked at me, then he looked at my stomach. He raised his hand, wanting to touch me, but seemed afraid that even a gentle touch might hurt us. "Fernanda, he became completely incoherent. You're willing to keep the baby? What are you talking about? It's already been more than 3 months. I suppressed a little embarrassment. "Do you even know how long you've been gone?" "I've already been watching pregnancy and childcare tutorials." Alonso quickly glanced at the cover of the book I had placed aside. His exhausted and dim eyes suddenly seemed to be lit by flames. He finally dared to reach out and hug me. He held me as solemnly as if he were embracing a gift from heaven. Yet he was afraid of hurting me and the baby. He controlled his strength desperately, restraining himself so much that his entire body trembled. That day, he didn't say another word. He simply buried his face in the hollow of my neck and sobbed. His hot tears soaked through my skin. I thought those were tears of overwhelming happiness. I didn't know. They were actually tears after surviving a disaster. Among Alonso's luggage was a letter. He had written it 10,000 meters above the ground. The handwriting was rushed and broken. 2 hours earlier, he had been terrified. Terrified that if his life ended there, she would never see his love. Terrified that he would carry that regret with him until death. But now, he was overwhelmingly grateful. Grateful that she would never need to read that letter, because he still had an entire lifetime to slowly tell her. Chapter 31. Fernanda, I am writing this letter to you on this plane flying over North America. The situation with the aircraft malfunction is not looking good. The flight attendants asked us to leave behind the words we want to say to the most important people in our lives. If something happens, this will be my will. Right now, I have so many regrets. I regret running away during this period, deliberately staying away from you, refusing to see you, refusing to answer your calls, because I was afraid of hearing you insist on divorcing me. In my 35 years of life, there has never been a moment when I didn't face difficulties head-on and fight back against my opponents. This is the first time I have ever run away. I don't want to lose you. But after spending my entire life learning how to handle the world, I still cannot think of another way to make you stay. Is this my punishment from fate? I refused to let you go. I held on to you and tried to keep you bound to me. And now, fate is making sure I may never see you again. During the time I was abroad, I couldn't stop blaming you. I blamed you for finding my weak point so precisely. I blamed you for showing absolutely no mercy when you struck. But after blaming you until the very end, I suddenly realized something was wrong. Why was it that the things I wanted to do, you had to go through so much trouble to find out from other people? When did I start no longer sharing my thoughts with you first? When did I start no longer telling you what I was doing? Suddenly, I understood your anxiety, when I no longer allowed you to be part of most of my time. When you could no longer understand what I was thinking. When even the people who once looked down on me naturally assumed that you should simply obey me. How could you not be afraid? Yet I still thought you were just making trouble for no reason. I'm sorry, Fernanda. I was wrong. I was the one who slowly ignored your feelings. I was the one who made you feel afraid. For all these years, everything I chased after was a higher market value, stronger production capacity, and a larger market. Only at this moment did I realize that the things I once believed were important, assets, shares, power, were actually meaningless, at least now, when my life has entered its final countdown. The only person filling my mind is you. It turns out that in this entire world beneath the vast sky, the only thing I cannot let go of is you. I remember when we first met. You came to the university to watch Leonardo's project competition. At that time, you were so proud and dazzling that no one could look away. I defeated Leonardo in the competition, but ironically, the first prize was an internship opportunity at his company. At the celebration banquet, everyone surrounded him and praised him. Only you walked toward me holding a glass of wine. You told me, among all these projects, you are the only one I want to invest in. At that time, I didn't understand whether the emotions that kept surging through me all night were because of the ancient vow to repay the favor shown on the golden platform. I would die holding my jade dragon sword for my lord, or because of the longing of a phoenix searching for its destined mate. I only knew one thing. I was probably destined to never refuse you for the rest of my life. Fernanda, if our final meeting had ended with such a painful and hurtful argument, would you have regretted it? When you see the news of this plane crash, will you feel sad for me? I don't know, because I've realized that many of the things you worried about would disappear completely if I were gone. How tragic. I loved you so deeply. Yet in the end, I became the greatest threat in your life. It was because I was not good enough. If I could live again, I would send you flowers every day. I would tell you where I was every moment. I would understand your worries and soothe your fears. I would do everything I could to make you know, you are the love of my life. The person I will cherish forever. Fernanda, the way my heart moved for you is exactly the same as when we first met. You came toward me carrying fine wine in a glowing cup under the night sky. I was full of anticipation, yet deliberately pretended not to look. But the moment I heard your footsteps truly stop in front of me, my heart was shaken beyond words. And until the final moment of my life, that feeling has never faded even a little.